I'm Susan Niesloss. I'm taking a journey across America, meeting people and visiting places you've never heard of and sharing stories that have never been told. Jewish pioneers, communities, and entrepreneurs, all rich in tradition and culture, all part of the Jewish experience. It's an adventure you don't want to miss. Anaheim, California, here in Orange County. It's about an hour south of Los Angeles and best known as the home of Disneyland. But it was also home to a group of German pioneers, many of them Jewish, who came here in the mid-1800s and left a lasting legacy. A legacy most people know nothing about. How did Anaheim get its name?
The name Anaheim is from German, Anaheim, Anna's home, named for the Santa Ana River, Anaheim, home, and it was named by the 50 original German pioneers. The two earliest founders were two gentlemen named Charles Kohler and John Frohling. They were both German Jews, and they started what was called the Los Angeles Vineyard Company. They came down here because they wanted to make grapes and wine. They got 48 other German immigrants, about a third of whom we have been able to find out were actually Jewish, and started the town of Anaheim, which would become the first city in what would be Orange County.
In the late 1800s, this parking lot was California's largest winery, thanks to Benjamin Dreyfus, an early pioneer, and Anaheim's first Jewish mayor. He spent $40,000 to build it, a huge sum of money in those days, because he wanted to compete with wineries on the East Coast and in Northern California. At the height of its success, the winery was producing more than 2 million gallons of wine a year.
He had a company called B. Dreyfus and Company. And what he is known for, and this is actually a little known fact that I found out, is that he made the first kosher for Passover wine.
So the house where we're sitting, Dahlia, is very famous. It's a historic landmark and has a lot to do with the history of the Jews in Anaheim.
And also the history of Anaheim as a whole. The house was built in 1882. It is a Queen Anne Victorian. It's actually been in magazines, spotlighted for its beautiful architecture. The man who built it, his name was Hippolyte Cahan. He married a woman who was the daughter of a pioneer, not Jewish. They had many children and they lived here.
But Cahan was Jewish.
Cahan was Jewish. He was an Algerian Jew. The reason that the Jews did so well here, there were two. Number one, there was very little, almost no racism or prejudice or anti-Semitism.
You're talking about in the early days.
I'm talking about the second half of the 19th century. The Jews were given incredible opportunities. They were known to be very intelligent. They were known to speak different languages. They were known to be trustworthy. And they were also known not to be big drinkers. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, a lot of Midwesterners moved here because of the weather, because they heard about how beautiful it was. And they brought with them their prejudices. And so all of a sudden, the Jews who had founded the Masons, the Oddfellows, these gentlemen's clubs, which were sort of the schmoozing of the day, found themselves on the outs. That was when the anti-Semitism started.
What power?
There were histories that were done, a lot of them in the 20s and 30s, about the founding of Orange County and the pioneers, and they would say, so-and-so was a pioneer, and if the person was Jewish, they would just not say what church they prayed in. What is interesting is that Benjamin Dreyfus, who is the only pioneer with a decidedly Jewish name, is the only one not mentioned. So there was whitewashing.
So fast forward then, World War I,
Yes.
World War II ends. A lot of people came back from war. Some of the Jews who moved here didn't want to identify themselves as Jewish, and what happened then?
The John Birch Society was a big deal here, and they were against Catholics, they were against blacks, anybody that was not, white Protestant, and they were against Jews.
I got out of the Navy and came to Santa Ana after World War II. A man by the name of Williams, who had an office right across the street from the temple at 8th and Bush, and anything that was Jewish he would try to connected with communism. And he was being paid by quite a number of people to try to do that. I was a member of the Kiwanis Club for over 20 years, and I was the only Jewish fella in the club, and you could feel some of the anti-Semitism. Sometimes they used to tell, jokes that they thought was funny, but I didn't think were funny.
For the white race! For the white race! The Ku Klux Klan actually was very powerful here at one point. My wife and mother-in-law both lived in Anaheim. Somebody had lit a swastika on fire in their front lawn.
The Ku Klux Klan had been big in the 20s, but they weren't after that. They were actually kicked out by the city council in Anaheim, to their credit, all of whom were not Jewish.
This is the original site of Temple Beth Emet.
So Edmund, this is where your Hebrew career started more than 40 years ago here on the left.
It was in the early 1960s. I was 9 years old, and this is where I came to learn how to read Hebrew.
And this was not a Jewish neighborhood.
Not a Jewish neighborhood, but not far from where the original settlers settled.
So I've been living here for almost 95 years. We had no Hebrew school, no temple. It was in the late 20s. They established a camp, a Jewish camp, up in the canyon. We used to go there once in a while, and that was the only thing really Jewish we did.
What was your experience like as a Jewish boy?
As a kid, I can remember that at times I'd hear kids saying negative things about Jews, and I didn't quite know what to do about it. And there was a kid I remember in high school, very smart kid, came up to me on lunch hour one day and asked me, he said, "Why did you kill Jesus?" I think the key thing for me is that you still felt, growing up here as a Jew, that you were a bit of an outsider.
This first grand search for beauty and talent to find the girl that above all you like.
In 1967, there was a young woman named Sharon Bernstein, a high school junior, and she wanted to enter the contest. And she was told she absolutely could enter, but it was recommended that she change her last name because it was so obviously Jewish. She did not, and she went on to win Miss Anaheim for 1967 with the name Sharon Bernstein.
Temple Beth Emet opened in 1956, and currently there are about 200 families who worship here. What's surprising, though, is given that it's California's 10th largest city, Anaheim only has one synagogue.
There was never a huge Jewish population in Anaheim, but over the course of years, the demographic shifted even lower, and people moved to other areas where it was more affordable to get a bigger house, and the center of Jewish life shifted down to around the Irvine area.
You are from the Netherlands, you are not Jewish, and yet you have this incredible passion for the pioneers of Anaheim.
I am an immigrant, and it's hard to find a lot of books about the first generation or second generation immigrant experience. Just an amazing history of the Jews coming to California, and it's sort of like, okay, come settle in, get established, give back.
Jewish people, I think, helped this area to grow because they were hard-working people, and they had shops and stores, and like I say, doctors and engineers all came out here and helped this community grow.